We are very happy to welcome you all here to this special evening, Hope for a Better World. It's truly going to be a celebration this evening where we'll get to not only help lift our own consciousness, but also how do we create a world that's united in divine friendship, harmony, and love. We'd like to take a moment and introduce ourselves. We are Anaya Swami's Gangamata, and this is Diva. We are the directors for Portland here we're the directors in the greater Portland area here. Ananda, which simply means divine joy and bliss, is a global spiritual movement dedicated to sharing the heart of Paramahansa Yogananda. Yogananda is the author of the best-selling spiritual classic, Autobiography of a Yogi, where his message was that we are all children of the same God, that in the inner stillness of meditation, we can not only experience God directly, but we can also discover our oneness with each other and with all of life. Ananda was founded in 1968 by a direct disciple, Swami Kriyananda. He dedicated his life, Swami Kriyananda, to sharing his guru's teachings and manifesting Yogananda's vision of world brotherhood communities, where people from any background who seek God can come together, live simply together in friendship and divine harmony. The first Ananda community was founded in Northern California, with subsequent communities on the West Coast, in Europe, and India. This evening also echoes an historic event. When Paramahansa Yogananda used to come to Portland and lecture, he stayed at this hotel. This was known as the Multnomah Hotel. It is now the Embassy Suites. And looking at this beautiful room, it's not hard to imagine that he could have even lectured exactly in this room. And it was in 1924 that he gave a talk on meditation and healing. And he spoke throughout the country, drawing tens of thousands of people, unifying people in this message of hope. And in these days where there's so much darkness and turmoil and uncertainty that is so active in this world, what a better thing to do than to come together in celebration and spread this unifying message that we too could see this hope for a better world really lies within our reach. If we could just open our hearts. And just like Yogananda, he welcomed people. He said his followers were people of every race, creed, and religion. He had no boundaries. And so this evening, we thank also our guest speakers that are here this evening, and all of you again for coming and taking the time to celebrate together.
That was good. "35 years ago, I was given Autobiography of a Yogi. And it was because I was desperate in my search to find sanity on a planet that seemed dedicated to, behaviors I just never quite understood. And I opened it and I realized that inside that book was the promise that I'd always hoped for, that there was a chance for people to live connected to life, connected to each other, connected to the source. And I found shortly thereafter, I found Ananda, and I discovered at Ananda that there was a place where my highest aspirations could be supported. And I visited for a while, and then I moved there. And what I found was a motley collection of the oddest characters on the planet. And then I looked in the mirror and realized I was one of them. But it didn't seem to matter, that there was a harmony and a kindness and a joy and a freedom that I'd never found anyplace else. And it wasn't about the physical place, and it wasn't about Ananda. It was about that central connection to spirit from inside out. We are in a time when, as Gangamata said, increasing fractionalization is on the rise. And the voices, there are two forces active right now. One of them is a force for harmony. One of them is a force for connection, a force that recognizes that diversity is power, diversity is interest, diversity is beautiful. And another force that does what it's done for a couple thousand years now, which says that if you're different, you're the enemy. If you're different, you're the problem, and does everything it can to work against each other. There's an awful lot of noise and activity and focus on that fractionalization. And every time it gets attention, it grows in power. Because everything grows by virtue of what we put energy into. And we thought, Jyotish and Devi are emissaries of this message of harmony around the world and emissaries of the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Now, it's funny, we're talking about Paramahansa Yogananda and Ananda as if there's something separate from what other people might be doing. And that goes right back into the problem. But the first time I visited Ananda, I asked the question of the person across from me. I've got a scientific background. And I said, what is Ananda about? I'd already read autobiography. I was already practicing meditation techniques and trying to discover from inside out. And they said something beautiful. They said, Ananda is about you becoming who you are. And I've realized across these years that we all, even if we're on the same path, if you will, the same tradition, we all talk to God in a different language. We talk to God, our aspirations are couched in the language of our own heart. But I discovered something along the way, and that is that we all listen with the same language. We all listen with the voice of stillness, with the language of silence, with the language of receptivity. There is no difference when we meditate. We're all one. And in that state, Spirit, God, Allah, whatever word you put to it, can fill your heart, your mind, your soul, leaving you feeling connected way beyond words, way beyond difference. When Jyotish and Devi were doing this West Coast sweep, sharing inspiration, which they do all around the world. They spend time in Europe, they spend time in India, they spend time here in the U.S., and everywhere they go, they speak the same message of hope. And it's far more than the words, it's the very power of their spirit. They have taken on the mantle. Swami Kriyananda took on the mantle from Yogananda to help spread this message. They took on the mantle from Swami Kriyananda. So everywhere they go, they're just radiating these qualities, and it's wonderful. And so we thought, well, gosh, maybe they'll come up to Portland, we can do a big thing, hope for a better world, because it's so desperately needed. And they said, sure, and we started to put this together. And then they did a presentation up in Seattle, and they shared the dais with folks from the Islamic tradition, from the Jewish tradition, from the Christian tradition. And while these are by no means comprehensive in representing all of the spiritual traditions there are out there, they certainly are focused on as places where there's a lot of divisiveness in the world, especially the West at this time. And we thought, God, what a beautiful message, what a beautiful image. And we thought, who could we have? Who could we invite here? And we started looking. Who would be powerful representatives of the mystical tradition? Because it's in the mystical aspect of any tradition that we contact God directly. And so we went looking around, and we found Reverend Larry King. He had actually brought some of his folks for retreats repeatedly out to Ananda Center at Laurelwood, where they found support for their tradition. And so he said, sure, I would love to. And then he said, by the way, I have a friend in the Jewish tradition. You might want to talk with Rabbi Deborah Kolodny. So we did, and she said, oh, what a good idea. That sounds lovely. And then we were looking for somebody in the Islamic tradition, and we went. I had a beautiful experience. I made contact with the Islamic Center of Portland, and I was invited to come and meet with a man there. And I got there, and I was told, you should arrive just after their prayers. So I thought, okay, that's fair, because then I wouldn't impose myself, and it would be their sacred time, and afterwards we could just have a nice conversation. So I got there, and I sat in the car for a little bit, and then I saw a woman going into the mosque, and I said, excuse me, I'm looking for Ali. Is there any chance that... And she said, oh yes, follow me. So I was guided in and smack into a discourse by their imam, and I was just brought into the room and plopped down, and instead of it being over, it was just beginning. And it was so beautiful. And the sonorous tones of the discourse and the reading of the Quran and the conversation, and then the prayer time afterward, and the connection between those in the word I use is Sangha, but within the group, the fellowship that was building, the attunement to higher values, I just felt washed over with grace and blessings. It was so powerful and so uplifted. And I thought, I'm home again. And I asked it, would it be possible, and if they could join us this evening and represent the Islamic tradition. And they said, well, we need to just reflect on it for a little bit and talk with some people. And we were running out of time. And about that time, a dear friend of ours for the last 30 years, Mindy, had been a part of the Sufi tradition. And she said, I have a friend who might be able to do it. And so we made contact with Hamid Paul Werder. And he also didn't answer. And so we're watching the time tick and tick and tick. He's gone. He was gone. I didn't know this, but he was gone. And as life does so often, he responded with an email and said, I've been out of town, but I would love to participate. I would love to be a part of this sharing of universal spirit through these different traditions. And it wasn't 5 minutes later that I got an email from the Islamic Center of Portland saying that they would also like to participate. And because we only have so much time and space, we had to say, gosh, maybe next time. I think they're here. I hope they're here this evening. 3 representatives were going to come. And if they're here, thank you so very much for the warm welcome and for the blessings of your friendship. So anyway, this evening, we have this remarkable panel carrying the tradition of love for uplifted values, for love for harmony, for world peace, for creativity, for friendship that comes from connection with spirit inside first, and then living from that center. I'd like to read from, the other thing that we noticed, and we checked this, I checked before we came up, everybody here who's presenting this evening, at one time or another, read Autobiography of a Yogi. And it's interesting because each person found not a specific particular path from reading it. They didn't all become Ananda members or SRF members or this member or that member. What every single individual found within those pages was the promise that their own spiritual search could be fulfilled. And that was Yogananda's message to the world, that your personal spiritual search can be, from right inside yourself, can be fulfilled, and then living from that, you can become a force for light and goodness into this world. Yogananda wrote a book of prayer demands and poems. This first one, I'd like to read from it. It's number 33, and it is, are you doing okay? Okay. It's number 33. I'll hand it off to you. It's demand to travel by the one highway of realization. So let's sit up straight. Let's just take a moment and take these words in. Our one Father. We are traveling by many true paths toward thy one abode of light. Show us the one highway of common realization, whereby all bypaths of theological beliefs meet. Make us feel that the diverse religions are branches of thy one tree of truth. Bless us that we enjoy the intuition-tested, ripe, luscious fruits of self-knowledge hanging from the many branches of true scriptural teachings. In thy one temple of silence, we all sing to thee a chorus of many-voiced religions. Teach us to chant in harmony with thy love's manifold expressions, that our chorus of souls rouse thee to break thy vow of cosmic silence and lift us onto thy lap of universal, immortal understanding. It's important that we hear good words. We'll hear lots of them this evening, but it's important that it be more than just words. Nancy, would you come on up and give us a chance to raise our energy and prepare ourselves?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Alder. I'm Residential Program Director at the Ananda Center at Laurelwood, and I invite us all to become fully present and open for the evening that we're about to share together by participating in a short meditation practice. So let's begin by checking our posture. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor, backs away from the back of the chair. Gentle curve to your lower back, supporting the natural curve of the spine, allowing the shoulders to roll up and back, palms upturned on your lap, back of your neck soft and long, eyes closed, and your gaze gently uplifted as though you're looking at a distant mountain peak. Let's bring our attention fully present in our bodies, release any tension we may be holding through 3 rounds of double inhale, tense, and release. Double inhale sharply through the nose, tensing the body. Exhale through the mouth, relaxing completely. Again. And one more time. Vibrate with energy and release completely. On your next inhale, allow the breath to rise and fall at its own natural rhythm. Observe it as you would waves climbing up an ocean shore and receding back out again. Become aware of the sensation of the breath in your nostrils, cool on the inhale and warm on the exhale. Just enjoy this moment of nothing to do or be, but fully present with this life breath flowing through you and every soul in this room. On your next inhale, open your eyes and bring this sense of presence and openness forward with you into the evening we'll share together. Thank you and namaste.
I'd like to offer 2 songs written by Swami Kriyananda. The first is A New Tomorrow, taken from his oratorio Christ Lives, and the second is simply Brothers.
When the dawn breaks and then the morning sends the sun high in the sky, who would hide from heaven's glory? Who would pass the challenge by? La 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 la
There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la.
Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. La 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 la. Leave the past, a new tomorrow.
days and mixed with many men. I've shared their days of sunshine, gone with them in the rain. The fires at evening said we were brothers. The fires at evening said we were brothers. A soldier I saw weeping beside a dying friend. My officers had said I must hate him till the end. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers. But seeing his grief I knew we were brothers.
A man sat on a doorstep to see the children play. The gentle way he smiled there would charm your fears away. A stranger he, but love made us brothers. A stranger he, but love made us brothers.
One day I climbed a mountain with friends of other lands.
The words we used were different, but joy one understands.
Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. Our gladness in God's world made us brothers. The words and customs vary like waves upon the sea. One life beneath the surface finds everyone to me. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Who knows the truth knows all men as brothers. Then brothers, why endeavor to set ourselves apart? The fences we've been building squeeze tight upon our hearts. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers. Come sing the truth that all men are brothers.
Of knowing century.Jyotish and Devi since 1985 when I moved to Ananda village. And it's a little odd to know how to introduce somebody in a formal setting who you've known personally for so long and has played such a significant role in your life. Back in 1985, I moved to Ananda village and was deeply seeking that deep interpersonal connection. At that point, they were already well enmeshed in serving people like myself. Ananda at that time was just was very small. It was just a few hundred people, and it was just one little place on the planet. And Swami Kriyananda would talk about it becoming let me describe it just a little bit. There were geodesic domes and rutted gravel roads or mud roads, and people lived in trailers and teepees and even a tree house. And there wasn't a lot going on outwardly, except that a group of people had come together with a promise that there was a pattern of life rooted in love for God and inner communion that was possible on this planet. And they were determined to see if they could live it, and if they found it to be true in living it, to share it with others. And Swami Kriyananda would sit in a leaky geodesic dome and talk to this small group of people and talk periodically about it becoming a global work. And people would look up at the leaks and look at the muddy roads and look at their clothes, and they would say, okay, last year, in the last few years, Ananda has, through the website, served people from virtually every country on the planet. It reaches out and touches and supports the spiritual aspirations of people everywhere. And again, this is Ananda is an organization secondarily. First, it is a movement of consciousness and inspiration of people who seek harmony, connection with spirit from inside out, of all paths, all traditions. Jyotish and Devi have been championing that and serving people, whoever they are, at whatever level of hunger, at whatever level of spiritual maturity, trying to help them take their next steps and live in that light. I'm going to give you some salient details. I wrote these down because I haven't a clue how to memorize this kind of stuff. But it reflects some of the things that are going on that they have used their life to help contribute to this movement in. With the passing of Swami Kriyananda in 2013, now Swami Jyotish was named by Kriyananda as his spiritual successor. Jyotish met Swami Kriyananda in 1966, working closely with him from that time onward. Now Swami Devi came to Ananda in 1969, and together they have spent their lives helping share the movement that is Ananda around the world. Now Swamis Jyotish and Devi travel through the United States, India, and Europe, speaking on spiritualizing daily life and the practice of Kriya Yoga meditation. Now Swami Jyotish is the author of several books on meditation and related subjects, including How to Meditate and Lessons in Meditation, along with 30-Day Essentials for Career and 30-Day Essentials for Marriage. He is also the founder of Meditation Therapy. Now, Swami Devi is the author of Faith is My Armor, The Life of Swami Kriyananda, and editor of The Light of Superconsciousness and Intuition for Starters, both by Swami Kriyananda. They are co-authors of the book A Touch of Light, Living the Teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda, which is a compilation of their weekly blog. They're dear friends to everybody they meet, and it's a great joy to have you here and to invite you up to the dais. Thank you so much. Let's welcome them.
Thank you all, dear friends. I'm always gratified when there's applause at the beginning because we never know about what will happen at the end, you know. So it's very nice. Thank you. And we want to talk this evening about the theme of hope for a better world. It's a very, very important theme right now. I think we all have to recognize that we're in relatively extraordinary times, times of difficulty, times of separation, times of discord. You know, there's apparently a Chinese curse that they give to people, which is, may you be born in interesting times. And whether we were cursed or whether we were blessed, we are definitely in interesting times. We have a friend who's a chiropractor and has been practicing for many, many years. And he said that over the long period that he has practiced, the people coming in, he has never felt this degree of tension in people's bodies, that they come in for a treatment. Normally, if you've ever gone to a chiropractor, by the way, there's a nice chiropractor joke of how many chiropractors does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the bulb has to return many times. Sorry if there are chiropractors here. Same for anybody trying to be a spiritual teacher too, you know. So, at any rate, a chiropractor normally has to massage a little bit before they can make an adjustment, because if the patient is too tight, the adjustment can't be made or it won't hold. And this time, or these times, they have to spend a much longer time getting the tension out of a person's system. And so the time that we live in is fraught with tension, and somehow we have to become agents of change to help that become changed in the society at large. Now, part of the talk is hope for a better world. And is there hope in these times? Because that becomes a serious question for many people. And like a very bad novelist, I'm going to give away the end of the plot, which is, yes, there's hope. And not only is the time that we're going through something that is an upward movement, even though it doesn't seem it at the present time, but inevitably, ineluctably, it's going to move into a higher consciousness. And really, consciousness is what it's all about. So right now, we may think that these times are terrible. We may wish that they would go away. We may hope that we don't have to deal with this for very long. But really, I look at it not as a problem, but as an opportunity. Because what we have now is like a patient who has been ignoring the underlying chronic diseases that have been afflicting them. They haven't been quite so bad that you really have to deal with it. And so you ignore it, and you limp, or you're tight, or your stomach hurts, or whatever the symptoms are. They go on and on and on until you go through a crisis that is severe enough for you to say, something has to change and I have to do something. And that, I believe, is the time that we're in right now. We're in a healing crisis, and what's going to come out of this is not only a group like we're here tonight together, but thousands and millions of people around the planet are saying, this is no longer tolerable, we have to change. So what needs to change? You know, politics, they certainly need to change. The environment, the way we treat the environment, that certainly needs to change. Economics, the split between those who have way more resources than they know what to do with and those who don't have enough, that needs to change. But all of those things, politics, environment, economics, are extensions of our own consciousness. They're simply extensions of what, as a global group, we have chosen at this time. And so just moving around, getting one politician out and putting another in, getting one businessman out and putting another in, those aren't going to change what's going on any more than finishing a game of chess, knocking over the king, then switching the board and saying, okay, now you're white and I'm black, and playing another game. We're just going through the same things. What needs to change is consciousness. The consciousness that produces the problems will continue to produce the problems unless that consciousness changes. It's apparently apocryphal, but there's a statement attributed to Einstein that says you can never solve the problem at the same level of consciousness at which the problem was created. And so we cannot solve these problems that plague us at the same level of consciousness at which they were created. Coming back to the healing crisis, when you have a healing crisis, you can't solve that healing crisis at the same level of consciousness with which you created it in your own body. We have to change consciousness. We have to uplift the consciousness. And so, yes, these outward things, they do need to change. We can't deny that there are problems there. But we can't think that we're going to change them by attacking them without changing consciousness. It's like a group of us walking through the woods at night with no light at all. And we say, this is intolerable. And one person starts shouting at the darkness, you have to go away, you have to go away, you have to change. And the next person said, that isn't going to work. I'm going to start tweeting and writing about it, and that's going to change it. And then another person says, I'm going to get a slogan, and put it on a poster. That'll change it. And a third one says, on the other side of the stream is a whole other path. Let's go over there. Maybe it's not dark over there. And finally, somebody says, maybe we should turn on a flashlight. And when you turn on a flashlight, the whole thing changes. The whole scene changes. Well, we're wandering in a dark forest of consciousness. And in consciousness, you don't have a physical flashlight that you can pull out and you can turn on. But you have to turn on a light. But that light is due to consciousness. And so it also doesn't help when we're wandering in the dark woods of lower consciousness or darkened consciousness to shout at other people that they need to change. Isn't that what's happening right now? Is most people are trying to change other people. What we need to do is we need to recognize that no change is going to really start happening in global or group karma, group consciousness, until we start changing our own consciousness. And then, as we change our consciousness, it begins to spread. Consciousness is, I don't want to say like a virus, but you understand what I'm getting at. It spreads. And most viruses are detrimental, but there could be good bacteria that spread too, that are helpful. But consciousness spreads from person to person. If you change your consciousness, it affects those around you. They've found that if somebody quits smoking, their friends are more likely to quit smoking. Well, that seems kind of a reasonable thing. But there's a secondary effect where the friends of the friends quit smoking, and a tertiary one where the friends of the friends of the friends are less likely to smoke. And so, see, consciousness spreads. So what is it, and how do we need to begin to change? Well, our consciousness is dependent on inner factors and not outer factors. And so Yogananda, when he came, his very first book was called The Science of Religion. And the central theme of that book was that everybody in the world is motivated by exactly the same motivation. If you think for a minute, those of you who are students of Yogananda, you can't give away the answer. But think for a moment what that is. The central motivation for everybody on the planet is the desire to be happy and the desire to avoid pain. But we go at that. Our strategy for achieving that can be very, very different. And mostly, certainly at the beginning, we begin to seek that happiness in things or things outside of ourselves. There was an American in India who, the Hindu religion has a lot of idols, gods and goddesses. It's all not, they recognize that these represent ideals of one consciousness. But people who don't know that see all these things, so they think it's all superstition. And so this American was accusing this Indian of, they have so much superstition. And the Indian listened patiently, and then he said, "Excuse me, sir, but what could be a greater superstition than the belief that something outside yourself can make you happy?" And so we give away our ability to be happy. Happiness is a choice. Happiness comes from inside. We give that away when we think that a new car or a different house or a promotion at work or a change in government or anything outside of ourselves, we give away our power to be happy, and then we're miserable because those things don't give us happiness. Well, they were never meant to. Yes, they can help a little bit. we have to have enough for our basic needs. Otherwise, we're constantly struggling with that. But once we have that, Yogananda said that simple living and high thinking bring the greatest happiness. And so overcomplication doesn't lead to happiness. But what does lead to happiness? There's a story, Ananda has a beautiful center near Assisi, and Assisi in Italy is the center best known probably throughout the Catholic world of the center for St. Francis, a greatly beloved saint. So imagine we're in the year 1200, and St. Francis and one of his closest friend monks are walking at night through a blizzard, a snowstorm. It's cold, they're lightly dressed and plodding along, trying to get back to their little monastery. And St. Francis says, Brother Leo, tell me, what is perfect joy? Is it perfect joy if all the brothers are able to speak in multiple languages and they're all eloquent and we're able to spread this wonderful teaching of ours throughout the world and we grow to great acclaim? Tell me, Brother Leo, is that perfect joy? And Brother Leo says, yes. Brother Francis says, no, that's not perfect joy. Is perfect joy if the brothers could heal the sick and make the lame walk and the blind see again? Would that be perfect joy? No, Brother Leo, that is not perfect joy. What about if when we come to the monastery and they see us and they say, oh, we've been so worried about you. Come in and have a warm meal and here's warm clothing for you and sit by the fire. Would that be perfect joy? No, Brother Leo, that would not be perfect joy. Said perfect joy would be if we arrive at the monastery and a brother comes to the door and looks out and says, who are you? You're terrible people. You're probably robbers. And they come out and they beat us with cudgels and they throw us out into the cold at night. That would be perfect joy. Now, first time I heard that with no explanation, I thought, the guy's a little, doesn't sound like perfect joy to me. What he was saying is that if we can hold on to perfect joy inside, in spite of outward conditions, that's where the perfection of joy comes. So if we can hold on to our ability to choose happiness, I heard a nice definition of joy. It's not entirely accurate in my estimation, but it's a good enough handle. Joy is happiness without any reason. So causeless happiness. And that which is there all the time, happiness all the time, is the joy within. So that joy within, that perfect joy, can be arrived at by us choosing that which makes us happy. But we have to start by recognizing that happiness comes from inside. It's a choice of our consciousness, not a choice of something outside of ourselves. And so that brings us to the practices which allow us to make that choice for happiness, to make that choice that allows us to, no matter what the circumstances, what is going on outside of ourselves, to find a joy within. And when we do that, when we go to the chiropractor, we aren't carrying a lot of tension. We're carrying that sense of happiness or that sense of causeless happiness, which is even better. And we're carrying at least a little cupful or a thimbleful, depending on how much we've expanded, we're carrying a little cupful of joy. And with that joy, as we relate to others, it begins to go viral. Our joy infects other people. Our light infects other people. So coming back to this group of people wandering in the dark woods at night, when we're in the woods of consciousness, there is no physical flashlight to turn on the light, but consciousness is light. Awareness is light. Empathy is light. Kindness is light. Love is light. Acceptance, peace, and harmony, those are light. And as we begin to live in those qualities, as we begin to really feel them and find them within ourselves, we begin to glow in the woods of consciousness with light. And other people who are lost, wandering in a miasma of blame and anger and discord, they begin, not everybody. If we expect everybody to change, we just become part of the problem. We have to begin the change with ourselves and let it spread naturally. But as we do that, we begin to become sources of light for other people. First those around us, then in greater and greater circles for others. So Ananda is trying to not only live the teaching of becoming sources of light, but we're trying to also put out a message that others, if we gather together, we can help others. That's partly why we're here tonight, partly why we're sharing the stage with these different traditions. 2 days ago, Devi and I had a beautiful tea with a high Tibetan Rinpoche, Sanghan Rinpoche, and one of the 5 or 6 assistants to the Dalai Lama was visiting our area, and he came out and visited Ananda community. Beautiful, beautiful soul. But as those of us who are seeking the light begin to reach out to others that are doing it, and as we begin to band together to do that, then not only do we create a little bit of light, but we help each other create more light, and the group of us together creates a kind of a glow that can lead not only us, but those who want to get through the dark woods of consciousness that we find ourselves in now. They have a way, they can see a pathway. It may not be our pathway, that's fine, doesn't matter. Just to see a pathway through the negativity and darkness that is assailing all of us. And so Devi will talk a little more about it, but we have a campaign that follows on the words of Gandhi, who said that we must become the change that we want to see in the world. And so we have a campaign called Be the Change. And it's to try to get people to use the tools that we have of meditation, where we find our own light, our own love, our own joy within, to pledge certain numbers of hours of meditation. And we're hoping to get 1 million hours of meditation for peace in the world. But the last thing that I want to say is that there are 2 really significant things that each of us can do that will help mass consciousness get through this healing crisis that we're in. One is that we need to establish our own personal practice of prayer or practice of meditation, and that has to become authentic for us, has to become real for us. Secondly, we need to share with others. If you want anything in life, the way to get that is to give it away. It sounds paradoxical, but if you feel that you don't have enough money, take some of your money and give it to a person that's poorer than you are. If you feel unloved, love others. If you feel that the world is dark, give light to others. So give away that which you want. Serve humanity, serve the world with those qualities that you want to see in the world, and then you will become an agent of change, and society will go through its healing crisis and come out the other end much stronger and much more able than what any of us have seen.
Good evening, everyone. So, as you're well aware by this time, our topic is hope for a better world. But hope isn't enough. Hope is like the spectator watching the runners run by the finish line and say, oh, I hope he wins, I hope he wins. But they're just spectators. But though if we go beyond hope and we become an actor, then we train for that race, then we put our energy behind it. So change is upon us, and hope for a better world is not enough. It won't get us to where we want to go. And if this is a mic change, I can always tell. We're waiting for the time when there's just a little implant, and you don't need all this stuff. And you just have to remember to turn it off at the appropriate times. Thank you, Diva. So if we want to not watch the change around us as spectators, but as participants, we have to do something about it. And another way of looking at the change that is upon us now is it's like there are two very powerful tectonic plates coming into collision with each other. And one is the plate of divisiveness and conservatism and violence and lack of understanding. And the other plate, which is moving in opposition, is a unitive vision, a new vision of what can be possible in this world. And what happens when these tectonic plates come together? One of two things can happen. There can be a devastating earthquake that destroys everything around it, or there can be the emergence of a beautiful new mountain range that gives people a new vision of what can be. So we are here to talk about possibilities. Either one of those possibilities could happen right now, truthfully. But we have to understand we have a part to play in which of those possibilities happens. And what Gandhi said actually was, the exact quote is, if we could change ourselves, the tendency in the world would also change. The tendencies would also change. And so it comes back to working with the changes that we see, the potentials, the possibilities, and saying, where do I want to put my energy? Which of these options am I going to be not a spectator, but a participant in this? And how do we become a participant? How do we begin activating which of these possibilities we want to see happen? Well, there are a number of things we can do. One is the power of our actions, through the power of our actions. And this means to put into practice the values that you want to see around you, to act in ways, even at personal sacrifice. And we saw this in Portland, news that reached around the world of two men that stood up for their beliefs and made the ultimate sacrifice of their life in doing so. Well, we have to be willing to act on our beliefs. Otherwise, what are they? They're hope. They're nice ideas. You know, many years ago, 1976, Ananda was struck by a huge forest fire. Ananda village, beautiful foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains, and it destroyed the entire community. Everything that we had built in the first 8 years went up in smoke. And as they began investigating, the cause of the fire was caused by county equipment, faulty county equipment that was shooting off sparks into the dry grass, and they caught, and it caused the fire. Well, all of our neighbors who sustained loss of property and homes as well, they sued the county. and they settled out of court for millions of dollars. Ananda saying, we have the power of our beliefs in informing our actions. We notified the county and said, we sustained the biggest loss, but you can rest assured we're not going to sue. We came here to build and to give, not to take. And they said, but you don't have any insurance. How are you going to rebuild? It's hard to get insurance in places like Nevada County that is very subject to forest fires, hard to get fire insurance. And we said, if we can't walk our talk, what good are we? God will provide for us. We're not going to take our loss on other people. And God did provide. And the money came in, not in huge amounts, but little by little we were able to rebuild. But there is power when our actions are informed by our ideals. And we have to have the courage to do that, to let our ideals, to act on them. And it makes such a beautiful statement. They say that the first sermon that Buddha ever gave after he achieved enlightenment, he was just walking down the road and a group of people passed and he simply raised his hand. But there was such power of peace in that action because it was informed by an enlightened consciousness that those people became his first disciples, his first students, and the birth of Buddhism began. And so we need to be an active participant in this possibility of change through the power of our actions. Also through the power of our mind, to see and visualize what it is that you want to see in the world. Not just once, not a daydream, but with focus, continuous projecting of our thoughts. This is a tremendous power. It can heal your body. It can heal other people's body. It can heal people who are sick in their mind, filled with hatred. There's a story, true story, of, I'm not sure what city it took place in, but it was in America. And there was a man all by himself out playing golf. And some other people were on the course at the same time, and they were watching him. And this man was incredible. And he was getting holes in one and just incredible, skilled golfer. And they came up to him and they said, "Sir, you must have been playing for a long time on this course. You know it so well." And he said, actually, this was right after the Vietnam War. He said, actually, I was recently released from a prisoner of war camp. But while I was in solitary confinement, I'm from this area, and I used to golf on this course. I visualized. I saw myself out here. I saw myself on this hole, and I knew what I needed to do. And this is what kept me going in that dark hell of a prison cell. And he said, now I come, and the visualization is a reality. And he was doing everything he had been seeing. So if we want to see positive change, we have to visualize it repeatedly. They're training athletes this way too. They're training runners. When you see yourself cross, Olympic runners, when you cross the finish line, see the time. And they say it's remarkable, the effect it can have. So the power of our mind, not to get discouraged. You know, it's so easy when you read the news to just throw up your hands in despair. And then where does hope go? You think, is it ever going to get better? I don't think so. But if you visualize, there will be people leading this world, coming forward with righteous action, with clarity, with unity, and see them coming forward. You know, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, when virtue declines and vice predominates, which sort of sounds familiar. When virtue declines and vice predominates, God comes repeatedly throughout history, again and again, to reestablish virtue. Well, we have to see that happening. We have to see the power of right action, of integrity, of honesty, of truth, of compassion. We have to use our mind to hold that. And no matter how many times people say you can't, it won't, We can never, ever let go of that vision, because when we lose that, that's what keeps it alive. And finally, so the power of our actions, the power of our mind, but also the power of our spirit, of our soul, and that's through meditation. That's what activates it. The Dalai Lama said, if we want to save the world, we must have a plan, but that plan won't work unless we meditate. It's a very important thought. And so the plan to save the world has to, and why meditation? Okay, some of you meditate, some of you don't. But meditation is not just sitting off by yourself, spacing out. Meditation is activating our higher self. It's focusing, and science is starting to study meditation now, and what they're finding is remarkable. For those who have been doing it for decades, who think, wow, we were onto a good thing, this really works. But they're finding that when we meditate and concentrate in certain areas of the brain, these are the areas of the brain that deal with joy, that deal with positive thinking, that deal with empathy. And I just saw a study that I found quite interesting. When they do research on people that are wielders of great power, be it political or economic, they find that the parts of the brain that are active when we have empathy diminish. And that explains a lot. How people can do the things they do when in positions of power, because that empathy begins to be shut off. But when we meditate, that empathy begins to be turned on. And we realize that everyone is a part of myself. And there's no one that we can judge or condemn. There's an amazing story of a Tibetan Buddhist monk that was imprisoned by the Chinese and brutalized and tortured for many years. Finally, he was released. And after he was regained his strength and his health, he went to see the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama said, "Oh, that must have been a very difficult time." And this monk said, "Yes, Your Holiness, it was very dangerous." And the Dalai Lama said, "You mean you were afraid of losing your life?" He said, "Oh no, it was very dangerous because I came very close to losing my compassion." And this is the fruit of meditation. No matter how hard it gets, you don't lose that. And another thing they're finding with meditation is that if something difficult, negative, abusive happens to you, you're able to, for practitioners of meditation like this monk, the reaction does not stay with you. You're able to move on very quickly. It doesn't leave an impression. It's fascinating. And so people often say, when we had the big forest fire, Jyotish and I lost everything we had. And we had a new son who was 10 days old at the time, whose daughter actually happens to be here tonight. But we lost everything. We had the clothes on our back, and with the new child. And the Red Cross came and they were interviewing us, and they said, "Well, we're here to write vouchers for the fire victims." And we said, "Well, we're the fire victims." And they said, "Well, no, we mean the people that lost everything." And we said, "Well, no, we lost it." And they just couldn't believe that we were the people that had gone through that, because there wasn't that same kind of an impression. We just moved on. And then my husband is a man of great depth and great beauty and great simplicity. And the Red Cross lady said, "I'll write you a check, you name the amount, and to replace everything you lost." And Jyotish said, $500. And I kind of looked at him, really? And then I just thought, let's do it. Let's see what we can do for $500. And, years go by and we have more, stuff accumulates. You don't lose anything. But the practice of meditation enables you to go through life without walking on eggshells, like, what if that happens, or what if that happens? It will happen. Rest assured, everything, it will happen. But it doesn't have to happen to you in the same way. And then the final thing about meditation is there's actually a scientific study, the 1% solution. If you, in a small area, if you can get 1% of the population meditating, the transcendental meditation people, the TM people, actually documented this. A large number of their people moved to Rhode Island, and they began meditating. And they found statistically that crime went down, accidents diminished, visits to the emergency room went down, finances went better, people were more prosperous, even the weather improved by 1% of the population meditating. And so by doing this, we can activate the possibilities of where this change will go. And I want to just close, and then our other speakers will share. I want to close with a story that happened to us, an incident that happened to us some years ago. We led a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, to Israel. And we saw many of the wonderful places there. In fact, Elizabeth was with us, weren't you? And there were 33 of us. But we went to one place called Megiddo, which is in the desert, and it's the site of 7 successive civilizations the archaeologists have found. They go down and down and down. 7 civilizations have risen and fallen. And it's also the place, according to the revelations in the Bible, where the last great conflagration of Armageddon will happen on this plain of Megiddo. And we were there, and we formed a circle. And even as we stood there, the military jets were flying very low. It was very fraught with tension, with import, like something was going to happen. And 33 of us stood there, and we were holding hands, and we were chanting Om, the sacred Vedic mantra, Om, for world peace. And I had an extraordinary experience at that moment. I could perceive with my inner eye that there were 2 great beings, maybe call them angels, I don't know, but one was of light and one was of darkness. And they were locked in conflict with each other, the angel of light representing peace and goodwill and harmony, and the angel of darkness, warfare and divisiveness, and they were locked, and they were evenly matched. But when we stood there, the 33 of us, very little human beings, and we chanted Om for peace, I could feel that the angel of light was strengthened, and he had more power in that battle. And so we are so much more than we know, and we have so much more of a role to play. And I just challenge all of us now, take it seriously. Do what you can to change your consciousness, to uplift it, to live your beliefs, to act on them, to be a participant, not a spectator, in the change that is happening in the world now. And if we can do that, we will help that mountain to rise from the clashing plates of tension in the world right now. And that will be a mountain of a better world, representing the aspirations that every human heart contains, but that gets confused and lost in all the, as Master Yogananda ji said, the thwarting cross currents of ego. We need to rise above that plane into the high mountain of the possibilities of a better world.
We're privileged now to share time. When we were looking for who would be candidates, to come and share this evening with us, and we ran across these three great souls, it was striking because immediately we felt a deep sense of friendship, a deep sense of connection, and that these were voices that were active already in creating hope for a better world within their own realm. You know, one of the things that's marvelous is God loves to express in so many ways, and He needs voices into all the different aspects of life. So it's a powerful thing that we're sharing this evening, and I want to thank them all for coming. I will introduce them the best I'm able, because while I feel like we've known each other for incarnations, what they're doing this life is new to me. So first I'd like to introduce Reverend Larry King. And Reverend Larry King was raised Christian. You know, one of the things that's helpful, here in Portland we have a Chinese garden, and if you go to the Chinese garden, what you'll see is around the perimeter they have leak windows. They put windows in the outside wall so that you can take a look in. And you don't really see a lot of the garden, but it helps you know the beauty of what's there and get a feeling for what's happening inside, and makes you want to know more. And so these little introductions, these are like leak windows into the lives of these great souls. And they also show that every single person who is alive from inside has had to work to reach that point. Reverend Larry King was raised Christian, Presbyterian, but had a largely agnostic life until he joined Alcoholics Anonymous about 20 years ago. It became apparent for him that God could and would see him through the difficult process of sobriety and the demands of life. He discovered that through faith and spirituality, he could transform his life and help others to do the same. Shortly after his spiritual awakening, he discovered the teachings and traditions of Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind and the Centers for Spiritual Living. He made that his spiritual home, taking many years of classes and training leading up to his master's degree and ministry license and ordination in 2010. He's a native Oregonian, a longtime Portland resident with a degree in English and theater, which we'll probably see played out here in just a little bit. An MBA in business. He spent 20 years in professional business management while actively serving in the community. He served for 10 years as director of Open Meadow School, serving at-risk youth, and 10 years training in his Masters of Consciousness while serving as an interim minister. He is now the senior minister at Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you very much and welcome. Nice to have you here with us. Thank you. Rabbi Deborah Kolodny, come on up. She felt like a sister from the very first moment we talked. We actually had a Skype conversation, the seven of us, and it was like old home week. It was really wonderful. Rabbi Deborah Kolodny, though of Jewish descent, she writes, was raised by devout atheists. They never went to synagogue. They lit electric candles on Hanukkah, but none on Shabbat. They had meals on Passover, but no Seder. She knew she had lost great aunts and uncles to the Third Reich, but it was never discussed. With no religious foundation, with little cultural indoctrination, how did she find her faith? In high school, she participated in an exchange program to Israel, and in the spring of '77 stood at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Placing a prayer in a crack in the wall, she stood in silence, cleared her mind. I don't know how long I stood there, but it wasn't long. The air got heavy. A sentient presence enveloped me, and I felt the touch of that which is unknowable. A deep quiet entered my core, and this presence remained. For the first time, I understood that there was a conscious force in the universe, and I called it God. Her relationship with Spirit has evolved over time, but its essence remains unchanged. Direct experience, deep intimacy, and gnosis cultivated through daily study, prayer, chant, meditation, Tai Chi, breath work, and conscious attention to the alignment between the gifts she's been given and the service she is called to. She brings her spiritual experience to activist work, helping bring harmony, clarity, and power into troubled areas in human life. She has taught in hundreds of venues and been published and has served as director of Nihirim and Panay Or. Thank you. Thank you. Let's welcome. Hamid Paul Werder, please come on up. Again, a feeling of deep, sure, why don't you come on over? Yeah. Again, a feeling of deep friendship immediately upon having the privilege of meeting him. He found Sufism after years of deep and earnest seeking for spiritual meaning. Along the way, Autobiography of a Yogi helped him trust that his search would find fulfillment. His spiritual home became rooted in Islam, the Sufi tradition, connecting his soul with Allah and showing the hand of Allah in every aspect of life. Hamid has applied his spiritual experience and service through consulting in organizational change and leadership for the last 25 years in Lionheart Consulting, and is a faculty member at the University of Spiritual Healing and Sufism. It's beautiful to see how this deep inner life expresses itself in service to mankind in very, very practical ways. Merging his traditional business acumen with spiritual healing skills, he serves to empower leaders to work from their prophetic light that he refers to as inner wisdom. In addition, he has written 2 books on building unity and mastering effectiveness. Hamid, thank you so much.
I'm going to start with Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. Yeah, and you say alaikum assalam, so I'll do it again. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. I want to address the choir for a moment. As I sat in the front row listening and watching the choir, it was very clear to me that I was looking at the face of God over and over and over again. I mean, the beauty was just stunning. And I trust that that's true about every single person in this room, that we have the light of God within us. And we forget. We remember and we forget that we have this spirit inside of us that is capable of the hope for the better world. And even in listening to my bio introduction, it reminds me of how I forget. My, the only reason I'm standing here tonight is I've spent 19 years on the Islamic and Sufi path doing my very best to annihilate my ego. And then they say, well, show us your bio so that, it looks like you have something to say. How many books did you write? I hate that part. But I have a little medicine for it. There's a favorite word that I have in Arabic that I want to share with you in case that's something relevant to you. The old twisting inside about am I good enough or am I can I annihilate my ego a little faster than you can yours? And the word is alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And it means all praise is only for God. All praise is only for God. So can you imagine if we had that one lesson under our skin, All praise is only for God? A lot of our troubles would go away pretty quickly. So that's been my lifelong lesson. And the name Hamid that I was given by my teacher has the root of the same word. So after about 5 years of having that name, I realized, that's why he gave me that name. I need to let go of my arrogance. I need to let go of my inadequacy. And we all have that, to a degree, here and there. So I'll read you what I'd like my real bio to be, and then I have a question for you. I'd like my real bio to say, on a good day, I find peace within my heart and bring peace to the world through surrender to God. How many people, if you would say yes to this, please raise your hand. How many people sitting here are longing for more internal peace and peace in the world through a deeper surrender to God? If that's you, raise your hand. Okay, so that's the definition of Islam. You're all Muslims. At least in spirit, and that's what counts. You know, we are one family of God. It's no kidding that we all are going the same place. Different paths, different uniforms, but we're all moving towards love and peace and mercy and justice. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to read a little section from one of my sheikh's books. My sheikh was from Jerusalem. His name was Sidi al-Jamal. He was a very Arabic man. He dressed in it looked like somebody from the Old Testament. And he was a bit of a gruff old man, but he had the heart of somebody amazing. And he traveled in this country for almost 20 years before he died a couple of years ago. And I sat with him, for most of those 19 years. And it was unbelievable to sit with a Holy Spirit that could, see right through me like nobody's business, and offered me so much beauty that I can't describe it. So the best I can do is read some of his words from Music of the Soul. God is the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. God does not know a difference between anything. He sees inside himself, and by the way, God is gender-free, by the way. This is a he conversation, but God is not he or she. God is cherisher and sustainer of the worlds. God does not know a difference between anything. He sees inside himself not only the Muslim in Allah, but also the Jew and the Christian. Allah. Allah is for all the people, not especially for anyone. When you know the meaning of God, you know the way to reach the garden of God. Who knows? Only the family of God. This is from your heart and your hearing. You must thank him for everything. When you understand this, you can understand everything. When you look into the light, you can see what is inside this light. You are the light, not another. You are everything, and you are nothing. You are the name of God. Thank him, because he teaches you to know yourself. What he is what you are. Why do you sit here? Who sits here? Only him. Look inside your eye and see him. Who are you? Only the family of God knows. Continue. If you want, you can have everything because it is all inside you. There is no inside and no outside. Know yourself well. My first attempts at meditation came in a Sikh Dharma community with Yogi Bhajan many years ago. And when I read their holy scriptures, again and again, almost every other sentence said, have the name of God on your tongue all the time. And when I became a Sufi and a Muslim, it's the same message. The remembrance of God's name is the cornerstone of cleaning the heart of the ego, cleaning the heart of the wanting to be better or not sure you're enough. All that stuff inside that we need to clean ourselves of, the remembrance is the practice that I'd like to share with you. So if you would close your eyes for a moment, a couple minutes, get comfortable. And I'll ask you to identify the name of God for you, whatever that is. And if you don't have a practice of the name of God and you're not sure, if you're just wandered in off the street tonight, you may just choose something like divine light. And just bring your attention to your heart area. And then quietly to yourself, maybe in conjunction with the rhythm of your breathing, just begin to say the name of God. And each time you recite that name, you're opening up your heart to receive more of the light that's already in there. You're shining the mirror that God blesses you with. And every time we forget who we are, we turn our hearts back to God with the name. And the name reminds us we're the light. And the consciousness changes and strengthens. And as said earlier, is contagious. And so as you're ready, gently bring yourself back outside. And know that it's always inside of us and it's always an opportunity to return. It's as simple as the name of God. Alhamdulillah.
Shaviti Shechina Lenegdi Tamid, I place God before me always. I invite you. Thank you. I invite you to join me in welcoming the compassionate one, the enwombed one, kirtan style. The words in Hebrew are Ha-Rachaman, 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 Hare, Hare, Ha-Rachaman, the compassionate one, behold, behold. So I'll sing a line, you sing back, but don't worry, I'll sing with you. Ha-Rachaman, 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 Hare, Hare, Ha-Rachaman. 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 Ha-Rachaman, Ha-Rachaman, Harachaman, hare, hare, harachaman. When Jews gather together to pray or to study or to sit, we always invoke God's presence as we begin. So I had a plan for what I was going to say, and it totally changed when the teachings of your teachers were downloaded. I think I will offer some scriptures and teachings around peace from the Jewish tradition because I enjoy doing that. But I'm going to start with a midrash, with a story that is connected to the time of year in which we dwell, and it's connected to the experience of devastation and grief that's grounded in what's called in Hebrew sinat chinam, which is baseless hatred, which may feel akin to something like what we're experiencing right now. And this story is about hope that's grounded in the experience of disconnection and exile. And it's also about what we do so that we're not just having hope, but we know what right action to take to achieve that higher level consciousness and transform the world. So we are dwelling now in the period called the 3 weeks, and it is a time of great grieving because the walls of the city of Jerusalem have been breached by attacking armies. And in just 10 days, our temple will be destroyed. The holy day commemorating this devastating event is called Tisha B'Av. And during these 3 weeks, we become more and more and more aware of the incredible loss of the edifice which represented God's presence in our midst. Can you imagine a focal point which for centuries held the energy of the One? Of course, the One is everywhere, around us, within us, unimaginably beyond us. But we had for centuries a place to locate the vibrational relationship with Spirit. And then it was gone. In these 3 weeks, we are immersed in a sense of our own wrongdoing around this hatred. Our sense of responsibility and despair. But because we have practice, we don't stay there. After the devastation of the loss of the temple comes 7 weeks of consolation. And week by week, we do our work around tshuva and atonement, return to the essence of who we are. And the grief turns around, and we lay down our sorrow and our sense of responsibility and accountability because we act to repair all harms that we have caused. Every hurt that we have caused, intentionally or inadvertently, and it is this path of responsibility and loving connection which brings us to the place on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, when we fast for 25 hours and pray, most of that time standing up, so that all that burdened us is gone. And we are clear and clean, and not just at one with God, but immersed in the consciousness of God, at one with God. Our vibration pulsing with possibility in life. There's a midrash that says that when the attacking armies came and they desecrated our temple and they went into the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, they saw the cherubs, the kruvim, that it was said that when God and Israel were separated, the kruvim would be facing apart from each other. But when these attacking armies came in, the kruvim were in intimate embrace, like lovers, which is how they were supposed to be when Israel and God were as one. And what is the paradox? How could it be that in this time when we had been engaged in baseless hatred, causing this devastating result of invasion, how could it be that the kruvim were in intimate embrace as if we were closer to God than ever? And the sages say that it is because in those moments, in those times when we feel in exile, the seeds of the greatest intimacy with Spirit are sown. And why is that? It's because long-distance relationships create a hell of a lot of yearning. And so, in this time when we may be in a state of despair, in a state of alienation, in a state of disconnection, the seeds for our intimacy, our unity, our most powerful potential for oneness with God and with each other, those seeds are sown. Hope is not irrational. Hope is utterly legitimate. And when we do our work around our own repair, not just consciousness, but our repair between us and others, between us and institutions, between us and the Holy One of blessing, then we reach the pinnacle of that intimacy. Hope in time of despair, yes, is not only necessary, but it is the obvious place to be, and there is work we can do to get us where we need to be. A sorbet kirtan, and then some scripture. Harachaman, 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 Hare, Hare, Harachaman, 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 Hare, Hare, Harachaman. So first I want to say that there are 36 times in the Torah, in the Hebrew Scriptures, where we are instructed to love the other, to love the stranger, because we were once strangers in Egypt. There is no other rule or teaching repeated as frequently, in fact, anywhere near as frequently. So the core of Torah, it is said, is love. The sages, in speaking about Torah and in speaking about peace, said, amongst a whole tractate of the Talmud called Tractate Shalom, these tidbits. Hezekiah said, great is peace, for in connection with all other precepts in the Torah, it is written, if you see, if you meet, if by chance, if you build, implying if a precept comes into your hand, you're bound to perform it. But what is written in connection with peace? Seek peace and pursue it. Period. Seek it in your place and follow it to another place. Rabbi Hillel said, be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace, loving your fellow humans and creatures, and bringing them nearer to the Torah. Ben Azai said, "Who is the strongest of the strong? One who overcomes one's inclinations to do harm." And there are those who say, one who turns an enemy into a friend. Let's bring that into the here and now. If only each of us who knew someone we thought of as an enemy turned that person into a friend. I think that would be just as good as the 1% of meditators. Maybe even better. Oh, do both. So tonight is the beginning of my Sabbath, Friday night through Saturday. And I want to sing just one of the prayers for peace that is found in a service. There's 43 times observant Jews pray for peace in a given day over the course of 3 services and a nighttime practice, 43 times. I think Judaism gets this rap of like having the vengeful God and the aggressive God and the warring God. I just want to tell you, every scripture has exorbitant love, and every scripture has some anger in it. 43 times observant Jews pray for peace every day. Here's one of those prayers. Oh, say shalom bimroma, oh, say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'emru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. May the maker of peace in the heavens bring peace upon all of us. Amen.
I'm kind of used to wandering around with my microphone, so if I get off track, someone kind of herd me back into the right direction. I'm going to start with maybe something just slightly different. How many people here at one time in their lives identified themselves as Christian? Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought, well, this is great. I have a couple people on the podium here who it will be interesting and new, and so I probably don't have to really talk too much about Christianity. But on the other hand, maybe I want to talk about why many of you wouldn't say today that you are Christians. And I'm going to do that through a joke. So I was walking across a bridge one day, and I saw a man standing on the edge, about to jump off. And so I ran over to him, and I said, "Stop, don't do it." And he said, "Well, why shouldn't I?" Well, there's so much to live for. Like what, he said. Are you religious or atheist? He said, "Well, I'm religious." Well, I said, "Me too. There's a reason to live. Now, are you Christian or Buddhist?" And he said, "Christian." And I said, "Me too. What a coincidence. That's wonderful. Again, we have something in common. Now, are you Catholic or Protestant?" And he said, "Protestant." And I said, "Me too. Isn't that awesome? It's like birds of a feather flocking together. Now, are you Episcopalian or Baptist?" And he said, "Baptist." And I said, me too, that's great. Are you Northern Baptist or Southern Baptist? And he said, Northern Baptist. And I said, well, you guessed, me too. Are you original Northern Baptist or Reformed Northern Baptist? And he said, well, I'm a Reformed Northern Baptist. And I said, me too. And then I asked, are you a Reformed Northern Baptist of the Wisconsin Synod or a Reformed Northern Baptist of the Missouri Synod? And he said, a Reformed Northern Baptist of the Missouri Synod. And I said, me too. What a small, small world. Are you Reformed Northern Baptist of the Minnesota Synod Reformation of 1879? Or are you a Reformed Northern Baptist Missouri Synod of the Reformation of 1915? And he said, I'm a Reformed Northern Baptist Missouri Synod Reformation of 1915. And I said, die, heretic, die. And I pushed him off the bridge. And I'm expecting that's why some of you maybe don't identify as Christians anymore. I think that both that joke and, to a degree, the many different sects of Christianity point out that when we hold on to differences instead of the samenesses, that we get in trouble. Now, I may represent part of the more mystical traditions of Christianity. As a member of Centers for Spiritual Living, we spend a lot of time in meditation. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, developed perhaps a unique way of praying. And so, the practices that we perform, very, very inward, very intimate in our contact with God. And I think that maybe that, and not to say that other aspects of Christianity, other sects and people might not do those same kind of things, but I wonder if it is our attachment to the outer forms that get us in trouble time after time after time as we seek out the differences in one another. What makes you different? Is it how you look? Is it how you pray? Is it whether it was, what was it, the Reformation of 1915 or the 1917? When we seek out the differences, my friends, you will always find the differences. When we seek out unity, my belief is that likewise we will find our brothers and sisters. Twice a year I have a great good fortune to teach a class that we call the Foundations of Science of Mind. And the first, it's a 10-week class, 3 hours, 10 Mondays in a row. And the very first class we talk about God. And I think I would like to talk about God with you today, because I think that's another place where sometimes Christianity gets in the way of itself, if you will. How many here are familiar with Santa Claus God? I think I probably need to explain, and then more hands will come up. So he knows if you've been good or bad. You're making your list up of what you want, and you get down on your knees and pray for them. Does this sound Santa Claus God? Beard on a golden throne on the sky, well, North Pole sky. I think we have cast God in our image instead of recognizing that we are made in God's image. And I think once again that has got us in just a pickle of trouble. When we view God as that judging figure up in the sky, and we somehow think that certain religions have the true one path and other religions are missing the mark. When we imagine that somehow there's a set of rules that are good for everyone universally, and they're nailed down and concrete, and we don't even have to think about them. We just act outwardly according to these rules, not mattering what our heart says, not mattering who we really are. I'm sure at one time or other that worked, but it doesn't work anymore. It is the inward journey that tells us who we are. It is the inward processes of contemplation and meditation that allow us to become truly fine in our humanity, to recognize that we are all one. So back to my class again for just a minute when we talk about God. So one of the things that I always say is you got to throw out the Santa Claus. He's not a guy in the sky on the throne. We teach that God is everywhere and everyone. That every person, every place, every situation, every thought, that in a way, God is the manifest universe itself. And the other thing that we teach is that He's not a transcendent God. And in fact, no He. Let's be clear about that too. I often refer to God as it, only that kind of doesn't sound very personal, does it? But certainly not a man or a woman. And by saying that God is immanent, I mean that God is here right now, as us, with us, working through us, that our hearts and our hands are part of the extension of God working in the world. Now, the reason I think this is so important, and it's the reason it's the first lesson I teach in that class, is if you really recognized, that every person was part of God, how could you harm anyone? To talk bad about another person is to talk bad about God. And ultimately, by extension, of course, to talk bad about yourself. To defame someone, to not run to someone's rescue, right? How can one part of God ignore another part of God? And I got to tell you, the other 9 weeks in my class, I think we just go over that one thing again and again and again, because even on an intellectual basis, I think we get that. I think we know we're all connected. I think we know that intimately we, as members of this planetary consciousness that we've been talking about tonight, even as we recognize that and know that we're connected in such an intimate and powerful way that we cannot and should not ever harm anyone else, that war is just some bygone thought that really serves no one. Intellectually we get it, and then in the world we forget. In the world we cut someone off in traffic. In the world we have a tense conversation with our boss. In the world things come up, and we lose sight of the fact that everything that we say is said by God and to God. That everything we do is both done on behalf of the divine and done to the divine. So we're back into that difference between hoping and knowing. And I think for me tonight, I'm busy in my head at least taking notes. And I can tell you there's a couple good sermons running around in my head for Sunday services. And a big one is on the difference between hoping that something happens and being part of the assurance that something will happen. And so I will. We were invited to do just the shortest of meditations, and I brought one from Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind, and I'm going to do that. But first of all, I'm assigning you just a bit of homework, and then I'll close with this little bit of meditation. So your homework for this week, or maybe for the rest of your lives, if you're willing, is as you are speaking, speak as God and to God. Because it's quite literally the truth. It's quite literally the truth. All right, so I invite you, if you would, just close your eyes for a moment. This was a short meditation written in 1938 by Ernest Holmes, the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. I am peace. Peace steals through the waiting soul, and the comfort of the Spirit comes in to the stillness of the heart. Peace, like an ocean of infinite life, reflects itself through me and calms every turbulent feeling. I am at peace and at rest in the knowledge of the all-good, of all God, which is always at hand. And I'm going to read it one more time, even slower this time. And just allow, if you will, the words to have an emotional effect on you. Feel your breathing calming, recognizing your own peaceful heart. I am peace. Peace steals through the waiting soul, and the comfort of the Spirit comes to the stillness of the heart. Peace, like an ocean of infinite life, reflects itself through me and calms every turbulent feeling. I am at peace and at rest in the knowledge of the all-good, all God, which is always at hand. I am peace.
I want to thank, casting.
Oh, don't step back. Don't jump.
But I'm in the 1917 synod, so. I want to thank Jyotish, and I want to thank each of you for your deep inspiration, and I think it was very meaningful for all of us to feel the unity in the different paths to God. We want to close now with both a visualization and a prayer, an affirmation, I should say, for world peace that Yogananda gave us. And but I want to mention, Jyotish mentioned it briefly, that we've started something called Be the Change campaign. If you're interested in participating, you can go to meditationpledge.com. And it's pledging not money, but time and intention for world peace. We have people now from 61 different countries who are participating in this campaign. I think you all have a little card on your seat that talks more about it, and we'd love for you to, if you would like to pledge 3 minutes a day praying for world peace, that's great. Cumulatively, we want to try to achieve 1 million hours of prayers for world peace. So if you're interested, you can follow the little card on your, just the seat of your chair. So let's just close with a visualization and try to feel each of our friends tonight, Hamid Paul, Rabbi Deborah, Reverend Larry, they all brought a certain quality of the divine, and they shared with us. But think they represent 3 great traditions. There's the great tradition of Buddhism, of Taoism, Shintoism, the Baha'i faith, all of the, and many more. But all of these traditions are God speaking in a certain way to reach certain hearts that can hear that language. And so let's feel a united prayer going up from this world. See people throughout this world kneeling in their faith, in their language, in their monasteries, in their ashrams, in their synagogues, in their mosques, in their temples and churches, and in the solitude of their soul. Feel them offering up a prayer. And feel it because you know it in your own heart. You know what their prayer is. People want to live in that presence of God's peace. And as in the words of the beautiful song we heard, brothers, though words and customs vary like waves beneath the sea, one life beneath the surface binds everyone to me. We are all bound, not in restriction, but united in our one prayer for peace, for understanding, compassion, and hope. And now join me in an affirmation that Yogananda gave for world peace. We'll repeat it together 10 times. First, the first line, Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. We'll repeat that together 10 times. And then, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. So let's do this in unison. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill this world with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. And now, Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Lord, fill me with peace and harmony, peace and harmony. Fill me, peace and harmony. Through the power of Spirit flowing through all of us, may we become the change we want to see in the world.
This message of unity, this message of peace is the hope for a better world, the coming together, the taking time out of our lives to celebrate this, imprints in the ethers and makes a change that radiates out. We'd like to thank those who shared the inspiration of God and awakened it, enlivened it, empowered it within each one of us, strengthened us in our own commitment to carry this light out into the world. We have flowers for you. Jyotish and Devi, thank you so very much for being here this weekend. Reverend Larry, thank you so much. Rabbi Deborah, Hamid, thank you so very much. What a privilege to offer all of us. And David, on behalf of the choir, thank you. Let's take this light out with us. Let's commit those who feel so inclined. Let's pledge our minutes, our hours toward world peace, toward carrying this light forward, radiating it into the hearts and lives of everyone on the planet, all beings, all creatures. Om, peace, amen. Thank you all for coming.